24th, 2021 meeting of the James City County Planning Commission Working Group. Ms. Cook, would you call the roll, please?
Yes, thank you. Mr. O'Connor?
Reminder to unmute everybody.
Mr. O'Connor? Return to him. Ms. Leverins?
Here.
Ms. Leverins is an at-large member. Mr. Haldeman?
Here.
Mr. Haldeman represents the Berkeley District. Mr. Polster?
Here.
Mr. Polster represents the Jamestown District. Dr. Rose?
Here.
Dr. Rose represents the Roberts District. Ms. Null?
Present.
Ms. Null represents the Stonehouse District. Mr. Kropp?
Here.
Mr. Kropp represents the Powhatan District and is chair of the Planning Commission. Ms. Wortman?
Here.
Ms. Wortman represents the Community Participation Team. Mr. O'Connor? I believe he is present, but we have a quorum.
Okay. I'll try to send him a text at some point.
I'm back. I'm here. Sorry.
Oh, okay. All right.
I apologize.
Welcome, Tim. And I think Barbara, you have a hard stop at 6:15 tonight.
Yes, sir.
That's what I thought. Anybody else?
Excuse myself that time.
Okay. All right. That sounds fine. All right.
Actually, this is Rob. I probably have to jump off at 5:30 because some work issues have come up.
So at 5:30. Okay. So just you can text or just if we're to pause in the conversation, break in and let everybody know that you won't be here for a vote.
Okay.
And of course, we have to do a resolution for a virtual meeting. There is a resolution in your packet. And to summarize, on September the 8th, 2020, the board readopted the continuity of government ordinance, which under certain circumstances permits this committee to conduct today's meeting electronic or telephonic means without a quorum of members physically present. May I have a motion for adoption of that resolution for tonight's meeting?
So moved.
Okay, thank you. We have a motion, and all those in favor, please say aye.
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 Opposed? All right, that motion is adopted. And although we don't have a designated public comment period, the public it has been submitting comments electronically and telephonically and through other means. And so, Ms. Cook, do you want to comment on that, please?
Yes, thank you. Just as a reminder, staff had included comments that were received prior to the packet distribution last week within your packet. Since the Planning Commission Working Group's meeting on Monday, staff has received one other comment that was distributed to the Commission via email ahead of today's meeting. That comment was regarding Land Use Application 20-0013. That was it. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much. And would you like to introduce the staff and consultant team?
Yes, thank you very much. I am Ellen Cook, Principal Planner, and joining me today from James City County are Paul Holt, Tammy Rosario, Thomas Wysong, Tom Leininger, and John Reisinger. Also joining us are our partners in this comprehensive plan update, our consultants Vlad Gavrilovic and Todd Gordon from EPRPC and Leanne King from Clarion Associates. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. And we'll jump right into where we left off on Monday evening. We have 12 land use applications remaining, beginning with LU 20-0016. And so either Mr. Wysong or Mr. Leininger, if you want to kick it off.
Yes, sir. Thank you very much. Land Use 20-0016 is a working group initiated application for two of the parcels located near the Croker interchange. These parcels are zoned for M1 industrial and limited business and R5 multifamily residential and account for approximately 105 acres. Both of these parcels are currently under the stewardship of land conservancies that intend to preserve the respective properties and are designated for mixed use. This property has been included as part of the Croker interchange mixed use area since its original designation back in the 1990s. The proposed designation change would be to redesignate these parcels for community character conservation, open space, or recreation. Staff finds the redesignation of these parcels from mixed use to the open space designation does not generally align with the key land use policy ideas of increasing the mixed use designation where appropriate within the primary service area. Furthermore, the current mixed use designation of these parcels sets the expectation that the master planning of this area will account for the specific nature of these parcels. Instead of approving this change to the open space designation, staff recommends that the mixed use description of this area be amended to identify these parcels as unique preserved property that are to be appropriately buffered and accounted for impact-wise regarding future development of the Croker interchange. Staff has received public comments for this application, and they have been provided to you in your packet. And I'm happy to answer any questions that you may have, and we'll turn it over to you all for discussion. Thank you.
Thanks, Thomas. Any questions for staff? Yes, Frank.
It may be for Vlad as opposed to Tom. But when I look at the congestion slide for virtual 2045, the congestion level, is that 64 or Rochambeau that's severe in red?
Hi, Mr. Polster. I'd have to know which map you're looking at.
I'm looking at the alternate future 2045 congestion level, number 2 in the packet.
Okay, let me go to that, or if there's a way that you could share that on the screen. Okay. Thank you. If you wouldn't mind repeating that, your question?
Is it Rochambeau or 64 that is severe, red? And then the follow-up is, why is it that in the middle of the exchange, it's also red on the Croker?
Okay. Yeah, I apologize. These are maps that were created by our subconsultant, Michael Baker. So I'm going to do my best to answer your question. Could you zoom into that segment on the screen to see if it's Rochambeau or 64?
This is Paul. I'm 99% sure it's 64.
Yeah, I think those were looking at earlier versions of those. Those were all on 64.
Yeah.
So the follow-on question is, if it is severe and it is 64, and we now have, what, 6 lanes? Why is it red?
That is something I would have to go to Michael Baker to answer, and that's probably a fairly complex answer. You know, what this shows is the difference between the scenario A and scenario B. So I'm not sure if scenario A also has it red there in that segment.
And we may need more than today to go back and verify the model. Remember, the current 64 widening ends past exit 234, where it really turns from green to red. I think the red and the yellow constitute leaving it the same, because again, until these last couple of weeks, last couple of days, the 64 widening continuation past the current segment all the way through Richmond. I mean, that's only a very recent thing, only in the last couple of days. So that might not be reflected in the model. And so what we might be seeing there, kind of going back to the red and yellow, is the current 4-lane, 2 lanes in each direction. But let us verify that. We may not be able to get to that today, but we can verify that and get back with you all.
Okay, thank you, Paul.
Thank you. Are there any other questions for staff or for the consultant team? All right, seeing none, I'll open it up for discussion or a motion on this particular land use application. My inclination, after reviewing everything, I think a real plus is the fact that those parcels are already under some conservation easements, which will limit the amount of development. And I am in concurrence with the staff recommendation to leave the land use designation as it is, but to revise the wording to ensure that there's stronger language about buffering between the parcels and so on and so forth. Any other discussions? Ginny, and then Frank again. Go ahead, Ginny.
Yes, thank you. Am I correct in assuming that all the conservation parcels are on the east side, right? None of the parcels on the west side is under a conservation protection of any kind?
I believe that is correct, Ginny.
Okay, thank you.
And Thomas, if that's not correct, jump in there, but I think the conserved parcels are on the right of our screen.
Yes, that's correct. The two parcels that are being considered for the change, it's a little tough to see on the map, but those are the ones that are thatched to the right.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Jack.
If these are under a conservation easement, why would and the conservation easement is perpetual, I think, if I recall from our days on the Land Conservancy, Rich.
Mm-hmm.
Why do we want to have this mixed use? I mean, why they're never going to be developed.
That's a good question, Thomas.
Sure. I think one of the benefits, it's a good point that if it's not going to be developed, why would we have it designated for mixed use development? And from staff's perspective, one of the benefits of doing that is that when you look holistically at the entire mixed use designation for the area, keeping it in the MU designation would allow for the county to have standards and buffering and an approach to these parcels that could be addressed within that MU designation. If we were to change it to the open space and conservation designation, there's really not too much specificity within that description that would focus in on these parcels. So by keeping it in the MU designation, even though it's not planned for development, it would let us have a holistic approach to planning the development in the area around those parcels.
Does that answer your question, Jack?
I guess could we? Yeah, that's fine. That'll do. Thank you.
What I walk away with is the fact that even though those parcels will not be developed, to the earlier discussion, there's more latitude in protecting the entrances and the pieces around those parcels than if the parcels themselves were just made open space. That's sort of what I walked away with based on Thomas's response.
Okay. Fair point. Thank you.
Frank, did you have your hand up again?
Yeah, I did.
Go ahead.
I'm uncomfortable with that, but it's in the larger context that we've been talking about through several land use discussions, and that I would feel more comfortable about this section to include what is in the Moortown Hillcrest Farm section, which abuts there, which will probably be the only way you can get into that EO as it stands now. And my concern has been, and I'm still waiting to see what the language is going to look like in the land use standards piece. And I was hoping, just like we talk about those sort of standards within the Anderson corner and several other places in terms of entry and access and what it should look like, it seems to me that the language could be taken care of, not only to take care of the conservation, but all the rest of the areas as you enter and exit those pieces of property. And so I'm still hoping that staff will come back that defines what that metro section is going to look like that they put in there, and whether or not we're going to conform with the UDA in terms of the look and feel and story and all that sort of stuff. I'm confident that if the staff is working on that, they'll be able to put the language that like they do right now. They describe both quadrants that we have here that they could put that kind of standard language of what we want that to look like to include the Hillcrest Moortown section that is going to be an issue in terms of access and entrance into that area. That was it.
And to verify, Thomas, that is on the to-do list for the staff to work on the wording there?
Yes, well, our recommendation would be to look at the MU description language and to, yes, further specify and make that vision more clear based on the feedback we've gotten from the public and from you all.
Okay.
So if you did that, then you could still put it in an open space lands conservation and still put the language in there for that quadrant.
Except if it's put in as open space, some of the parcels that aren't subject to this land use application, I'm interpreting the staff remarks to mean that they wouldn't have as much protection moving into that, even though the MU wording might be revised.
That was kind of my point about the description of both quadrants in the Hillcrest, where you could put that specificity in the same way we've done it for Anderson Corner. I mean, we did it in 3 places for Anderson Corner. We did it for the EO description of it, we did it for the mixed use, and we did it for the area around there. And this is the same thing.
Okay. Julie had her hand up.
Yes, thank you. I'm struggling with this, and I tend to side with Jack. I mean, if this is already in a conservation easement, I fail to see why it would make any sense to designate the land use as mixed use. I mean, that's the 30,000 foot view of that. And I'm also concerned about what the implications would be if we left this as mixed use, what the implications might be if on our next application, which is the Monticello across from Windsor Mead, because I assume the same argument would apply. So, thanks.
Sure. Any staff, any comments or concerns over the discussion so far?
No concerns. I mean, I think it's very helpful. I do think that the designating the properties for mixed use, I do see the point about why would we designate conserved parcels for mixed use development. That is the current designation now, and I think staff's thinking would be there's a way in that broader context to sort of ensure that there's buffering and design that continues to protect the conserved areas within mixed use, but certainly up to the working group here on this one.
All right. Ginny.
Thank you. Just one little question. Over on the east side there, the Hankins protected land trust parcel, that's the big, long one, has a little teeny, the smallest of the parcels over on that east side that's also owned by Hankins. But is it not protected? Is it? It's just, how is it designated at the moment? It's parcel 143, I'm having trouble reading it. It's 8212 Croker Road. The smallest one of those that butts up against Kiskiak.
That's not protected.
So is it mixed use?
Yes, I believe so.
Okay, so that would be consistent with what else we're trying to do. And it might then augur for the approach that the staff is suggesting because of the buffering. If I'm thinking about this correctly, but I may not be.
I'm sort of looking similarly, Ginny. And Rob, you had your hand up.
Yeah, I guess I'm still not clear on why designating mixed use on these parcels gives more flexibility to the neighbor parcels for conservation issues. And I'm wondering if staff could give an example of how that would play out if it was mixed use or conservation land. Like, how does that impact what happens to neighboring parcels in the decision?
Sure. Yeah, I can try to give a high-level summary, and if anyone else on staff wants to jump in, please do. But the way that the designation description would work is that we're setting out the expectations for development in the area that's designated for mixed use. And so if adjacent properties were to develop, we would be able to put language within the description language that specified how we would expect things to look, how we would want impacts to potentially be mitigated with those historic properties that are also in the MU designation in mind. And so that would sort of be the thinking, is to have it all under one broad categorization, so that when there's a rezoning application or some sort of legislative proposal on adjacent property, the conservation parcels are included in that designation and are addressed in that area. So that's sort of one of the benefits of keeping it in the MU designation. It's not the only way to do it, but I think that's the way staff was thinking about it. Hopefully that's a little bit helpful, but let me know.
And so on the map, the crosshatched two parcels are the only conserved properties. So all of the land, even there's a strip that divides the two conserved properties, all of that land would be subject to any restrictive language in the MU for the two parcels, that even though they're conserved. Is that right?
Yes, if I'm following you, the parcel that's in between the two conserved ones, I don't believe has a conservation easement on it.
No, I don't think it does. Yeah.
In the Gulf. So exactly, if there were, for example, a proposal on that property that is designated for mixed use, and we would look at the mixed use language and then screen that against the legislative application to make sure that it's meeting the vision for the community. And if those two parcels that are conserved were kept in the MU designation, it just sort of keeps it all in one place for the review to check on the impacts and things like that.
Okay. Julie?
Yeah, I'm still struggling with this. And it just seems to me that if we have conservation parcels, we always look at the neighboring properties when there's a proposal for development. And I'm thinking that if this is community character open space, then we are absolutely going to look at preserving that when anything threatens it. And if it was designated for mixed use, then people might think, well, then we don't need to worry about it quite so much. So there are a couple of different ways to look at that, but I'm tending to think that this is a good idea to make it community character space. Thanks.
Okay. I see three hands. Julie just spoke. Rob and Ginny, I don't know if you have additional comments.
All right, I just lowered my hand.
Oh, okay. Okay. All right. I don't see any more comments, so I'm now looking for a motion that would change the land use designation from MU to community character, conservation, open space, or recreation.
This is Julie. I'm going to make a motion that we recommend that LU 20-0016 be changed to community character, conservation, open space, or recreation.
Okay. Ms. Cook, would you call the roll, please?
Yes, Mr. Crop.
Aye.
Mr. Haldeman.
Aye.
Ms. Leverns.
Aye.
Ms. Knoll.
Aye.
Mr. O'Connor.
Aye.
Mr. Poster.
Aye.
Dr. Rose.
Aye.
Ms. Wortman.
Aye.
Thank you. Motion carries.
All righty. Thank you. We now move to number 17. Thomas.
I'll be taking this one, Rich.
Oh, okay. I'm sorry, Tom. Go ahead.
It's all good. LU-20-0017 is a PCWG initiated application and is located at 4744 Old News Road, 3897, 3905, and 3927 Ironbound Road. The parcels total to 3.74 acres, zoned R8 rural residential, and is located inside the PSA. The current land use designation is neighborhood commercial. The proposed land use designation is community character conservation, open space, or recreation, or low density residential. Currently, the parcels are used for single family residential. Staff recommends approval for low density residential for this land use designation change. Although community character conservation, open space, or recreation designation may address traffic concerns, it does not ultimately align with this proposal, given that there is existing residential development on the parcels, and the parcels themselves are not historic character or environmental value. Low density residential is a more appropriate designation because it allows for the existing residential use and potentially very limited commercial use while reducing potential traffic impact on Monticello Avenue. Staff has received public comments for this application and has been provided to you previously in the packet and is happy to answer any questions you may have. Thank you.
All right, questions for staff. Julie?
No, I don't have a question for staff.
Oh, okay. Anyone with a question for staff? And so the assumption, just taking this out, if it were low density residential, the assumption is that the structures built on those 4 lots would face the existing residential neighborhood with possibly some extensive buffering against Monticello. Is that what staff would envision would be a likely outcome for that?
I believe so. I don't believe they'd be able to take access from Monticello given the limited access along there. So they would need to, at a minimum, take access from Ironbound Road.
Ironbound. Okay, good. Yeah, that's sort of what I was thinking as well. All right, thank you. Let's see, Jack, you had your hand up.
Yes, sir. I'm the one who initiated this, as you know, and I didn't envision it for low density residential. I would just like to see the county buy this and let it sit fallow because, and you've heard me all say this before, I'm sorry for beating a dead drum here, but these 4 parcels were originally built on a rural road surrounded on 3 sides by woodlands and so forth and so on. And now, 25 years ago, they put through 199 along the northeast side of it. Then right through their back door, they put Monticello and clear cut 300 acres of the woodlands and paved it over. And then just to the west is another strip mall. And this, you can't make this low density residential. Nobody's going to put a house there. I wouldn't live there. And on the other hand, as you know, from where those of us who were on the planning commission when a year and a half ago, when a businessman came in and proposed to put a small strip mall in there that really was exactly the same as the one right next to it. We turned it down because of the traffic impact, the convoluted nature of Monticello Avenue right there. This section of Monticello has the highest accident rate in the county now without the extra traffic. And the very strange traffic light configuration along here. If we're not going to allow some kind of a retail restaurant, small retail restaurant type arrangement here, I don't think the property is good for anything. frankly, I don't, we couldn't put a hotel there. You couldn't put, certainly not industrial, and housing. I just don't see anybody ever buying a house there. And I guess I just feel sorry for these people. I don't know what to do about it. So anyway, that's where I am. I don't know how I'm going to vote on this. If we make it, the proposals for, I think, open space, and that reduces their property value even more.
It's open space or low density residential. And there were. Go ahead, Jack. I won't. I don't.
I'm through crying in my beer here. I just.
And Julie, you had your hand up, and Frank did, and I also, after both of you, I have a question for staff as well. So, but go ahead,
Okay.
Julie.
Are we still addressing this questions to staff? Because I just have a general discussion question.
Sure. It's an open forum now on this one.
My biggest concern here is that it not be neighborhood commercial. Low density residential with, it could be a church, it could be some other things, as long as it's opening onto Ironbound Road. I'm sure the neighbors across the street would be objecting to anything that would increase the traffic there. But staff's argument to make it low density residential makes some sense to me. I too would like to see the county just take this off the market completely, but that may not happen. But as long as it's not neighborhood commercial anymore, I'd be okay. Thanks.
All right, Frank.
Yeah, I'm sorry. I think this was back to Tom on your question, Rich. Is, if I remember correctly, there's a VDOT easement and a fence that parallels that property that has to be maintained. Am I wrong about that? I mean, that essentially, that fence sits in almost from the from where the gutter is, where all the drainage is. It almost sets back about 6-7 feet, which is all buffered in there. Wouldn't that be retained also, Tom Leninger?
That is correct. I'm trying to remember from the application how far that fence runs down the property. I do recall the corner, the southwest corner of the highlighted parcels, that the GIS is a little bit off from the survey that was submitted back with that application. So there's a little bit more right-of-way buffering there than just that couple 5 to 7 feet that we were just referencing.
Yeah, exactly, because that's where the drainage pipe goes across the road there, and it is wider. So I think, Rich, that the buffering piece is going to be maintained. And back to Julie's point on LDR, what are the other uses that can be used in there, Tom, besides low-level residential? I mean, could you put a church in there?
Yeah, so the low-density residential does have schools, place of public assembly, so churches are included in that. Very limited commercial or community-oriented facilities is what the current land use description is.
I just recall the number of people that we had that came out that were so adamantly against this. And part of it was not only the traffic piece, but then the fact that any kind of development or exiting onto the Ironbound side was also rejected. But I tend to think about keeping this in the community open space as opposed to even allowing any kind of further development in that property. And that's it, all I have. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. And my question was overcome by this previous discussion, so I do not have anything further. And let's see another, Mr. O'Connor, Tim.
I am just in favor of leaving it where it was. I think that there are probably other solutions that could be considered for traffic or otherwise. I just think it's extreme to make this, take something that's in this quarter and make it open space. I just don't think low density residential is a good use of that spot. So I'm not inclined to support any change from what its current designations are.
I was looking, I pulled the statement of intent for neighborhood commercial, and the emphasis is landscape buffering when located adjacent to residential properties. It says this classification is appropriate where proximity to residential areas, existing land uses, traffic patterns, and other factors make desirable to maintain a commercial character much less intense than permitted like in the general business district. And I think to me, that makes sense. I agree with Jack when he says low density residential, nobody's going to build a house there. And, if that was just designated as open space, I'm not sure the use just because of the proximity to Ironbound and Monticello. So, I'm leaning towards, I'm still on the fence with this one, but I'm leaning towards saying just keep it as it currently is as neighborhood commercial because of the character of the entire Monticello Avenue area. But it's a tough call. Let's see who else has a hand up. Ginny.
Okay, just sort of playing devil's advocate here. If we did keep it neighborhood commercial, what would happen the next time somebody came along and wanted to do, wouldn't the same thing happen with the Planning Commission as happened last time if somebody came along and wanted to do another strip?
Well, I think a lot of that will depend on the intensity. If I remember correctly, the application that was turned down had a very high volume. It was either a service station or a lube station or something that had a high turnaround of cars coming in and out, and it was a high impact use on those parcels. And I think, maybe that wasn't the only reason, but if my memory serves, that's the reason I was against it, is that I felt much too intense with too much traffic coming in and out from Monticello. And to your question, which is a great question, Ginny, I think that's where these applications, as they work with staff and come through the legislative process, there can be requirements if the feeling is that a certain development is too intense. The applicant could be told that chances of approval are slim.
Is there, this probably may not be an appropriate question for this forum, but I'm just wondering, is there any taste on the part of the county to think about acquiring these parcels and doing something with it, like a pocket park or something?
I'm going to put Paul on the spot to answer that question.
Yeah, it's a really good question. Definitely not something we'd be in a position to answer tonight. So, at this point, I would say probably not at this point, because there's right sort of on the other side, not far from here, is already Veterans Park, which is pretty well established. So I would say, never say never, but at this point, there are no plans for anything new in this immediate vicinity.
Yeah. Okay. Thanks.
Okay. Julie?
Yes. What if we preemptively said we would like to see this as federal, state, and county land? Can we do that? I mean, what we're looking at here is a long-range wish list, right? I mean, that's kind of what the comp plan is.
I'm gonna defer to Ellen to chime in here and let me know if I'm off base on the methodology. I don't think historically we've ever designated property that was not already under control or ownership by federal, state, or local government.
Okay.
So that would be a pretty big methodology departure.
Yeah, but it doesn't hurt to ask. I'm really pretty adamant that I don't want to see this continue as neighborhood commercial because I really don't want to encourage developers to keep trying.
Okay.
And it seems to me if we're aiming for low density development, then whatever is permitted under low density residential would be about as much as I'd be willing to see.
Okay. Thank you. Jack had a hand and so did Frank. Go ahead, Jack.
I just checked my notes on this dating back to that application a year and a half ago, and the development that was applied for this parcel was almost half the permitted. That is to say, they could have doubled the size of that development and still had it fit within the design guidelines. The total building area in neighborhood commercial must be under 40,000 square feet. That development was only 14,000 square feet. The floor to area ratio must not exceed 0.2. That one was only 0.11. And it fit, it's infill development. It's a neighborhood scale. It's consistent with the neighboring development. I mean, it checked every box, and yet we turned it down. And it's any commercial development that would be put in there would have to be at least as intrusive as the one we turned down. It's hard to imagine it getting any smaller and still being economically viable. The 580 additional daily traffic trips were already built into the comprehensive plan traffic analysis from 2014. And, so they weren't doing anything extraordinary in that regard. It all boils down to the convoluted nature and the poor design of Monticello Avenue through there. And so Ginny put her finger right on it. First of all, I'm not sure you'd ever get a developer to make an application now. They saw the one that we turned down and they would say, well, they're not going to prove anything. So, why should I go through all the time and expense of applying for it? And yet, if we make it even less valuable by making it open space, and that's adding insult to injury to the property owner. I'm sorry for blathering here, but this thing has bothered me for 16 months, and it bothers me all the more because I can't come up with a good answer for it. Yeah. And I kind of agree with Tim. Just leave it as it is and hope for the best, but I'm not optimistic.
Yeah. Rob and then Frank. Go ahead, Rob.
Yeah, I'm not going to help the discussion at all by what I'm going to say, but I will note that from a conservation perspective, you actually don't want this land to be this nice natural area, in part because you're going to be inviting deer and other critters that are going to be running around this heavily trafficked area. And you're already concerned about accidents on Monticello Road, and you make this a nice home for deer, you're just going to be inviting more.
That's a good point. Yeah. And there are some residences already on those parcels, by the way. Yeah. Okay. Thanks, Rob. Frank?
That's why the VDOT guys have a fence along that piece to prevent exactly what you're talking about, Rob, and why they're telling the landowner that they have to upgrade it, which he's objecting to. But that's besides the point. Is when I argued against this thing, it was the traffic. And if you went back and looked at the current comp plan, you'll see that we talk about Monticello and the things that you can mitigate to make the traffic better. And all the things that were in that comp plan were already done by the VDOT guys by synchronizing the light, fixing the intersection down at News Road, and actually making it worse going on Ironbound. And so the only other solution is to go to 8 lanes. So one of the things that I have enjoyed about our modeling effort is if you look at the congestion for both the virtual future and the alternative, which is do nothing, the congestion level stays at E and F, and our county wants it to be a C. So this is never going to get better for traffic unless you put 8 lanes there. And the likelihood of that happening is not good. So if we're talking about what the future is going to look like for a comp plan in 2045, leaving this as neighborhood commercial makes no sense, because you're going to have the same problem and it's going to be worse with the traffic. Thank you.
Thank you. Julie, is that a new hand? And you're muted.
Okay, no, it's not a new hand, sorry.
Okay, and Rob, new hand or nope? Okay. Does not look like there's any other comments. So may I have a motion? The proposal is to change the current land use designation from neighborhood commercial to something else. And that's what we're looking for. So would anyone care to make a motion?
This is Julie. Do we need to specify what we want to change it to, or can we leave it as the either or?
I think we have to specify.
Okay, well, let me make a motion then to.
Is that, Ellen, is that correct?
Yeah, sorry for interrupting.
No, go ahead. Yep, okay.
Yeah.
Okay, well, let me make a motion that we recommend changing LU 20-0017 from, what is it now?
It's currently neighborhood commercial.
From neighborhood commercial to low density residential.
All right. Ms. Cook, would you call the roll, please?
Yes, Mr. Kropp.
No.
Mr. Haldeman.
No.
Ms. Leverins.
Aye.
Ms. Null.
No.
Mr. O'Connor.
No.
Mr. Colster.
No.
Dr. Rose.
No.
Ms. Wortman.
Sorry, no.
The motion does not carry. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Mr. O'Connor, would you care to make a second motion?
Do we need to do that? I'm sorry. To keep it, to have it remain the same?
Well, somebody, okay, the way I'm looking at it, somebody can make a motion to change it from neighborhood commercial to some other designation. Or somebody can make a motion to let this land use designation remain unchanged.
Mr. Chairman, this is Jack. I move that we let this parcel remain unchanged as neighborhood commercial.
Okay, thank you, Jack. Ellen, would you please call the roll?
Yes, Mr. Kropp.
Aye.
Mr. Haldeman.
Aye.
Ms. Leverins.
No.
Ms. Null.
Aye.
Mr. O'Connor.
Aye.
Mr. Colster.
No.
Dr. Rose.
Aye.
Ms. Wortman.
Aye.
Motion carries.
Okay, thank you all. We now move on to LU 0018. Either Tom or Thomas, if you'd like to kick that one off.
Certainly. LU 20-0018 is the first scenario B initiated application, meaning staff identified this designated area on the scenario B map as differing from what is shown on the adopted land use map. This application is for the parcel located northeast of the Forge Road and Richmond Road intersection, which is addressed 3026 Forge Road. This parcel is located adjacent to Forge Road on the other side of the railroad tracks from the Hankins Industrial Park. The historic use of this property is agricultural, and this parcel accounts for approximately 57 acres, is zoned for agricultural use, and is located inside the primary service area. The current land use designation for this property is low density residential. The proposed change would be to remove this property from the primary service area and designate it for rural lands. After evaluating this proposal, staff does recommend approval of this change. Traffic impact wise, this portion of Forge Road is experiencing low congestion and is expected to have a similar level of congestion in 2045. The redesignation of this parcel from low density residential inside the PSA to rural lands outside the PSA does generally align with the key land use policy idea of reducing the PSA in currently undeveloped areas. In addition to the responses in the future land use questionnaire, I do want to say that staff did receive several letters and emails regarding this particular application, which have been either included in your packet or were forwarded to you directly via email. Staff is happy to answer any questions you may have, and I will turn it over to you all for discussion. Thank you.
Okay, thanks, Thomas. Any questions for staff? Just a general procedural question. If it was voted to remain as it is inside the PSA with low density residential, would the working group have the ability to ask that stipulations be included that any low density residential development be at the bottom end of the 1 to 4 dwelling unit scale? Is that something that would be appropriate?
I'd be glad to weigh in on that. This is Helen.
Yes.
Yeah, unlike the mixed use designation, which does have descriptors for each of the different mixed use areas, our low density residential designation is general and is not specific to any particular parcel. So as currently configured, we wouldn't really have any location to put an item like that.
Okay. All right. Thank you. All right. Any other questions or discussion items?
I just, Rich, it's Tim.
Oh, okay, Tim.
If we're in discussion mode, I would just offer that I am not in favor of taking this out of the PSA. You know, I'm not so much in the camp of we need to allow it to be developed for the Toano revitalization, but I do think that there's some benefits for it remaining inside the PSA. And it kind of goes to our conversation the other day about one, I suspect, and I did speak to Ms. Cruz, who's one of the landowners there, and there's been significant investment in that property from design standards, much like we did had the discussion on Centerville Road the other day. And from what I understand, there were discussions at some point for the county to purchase the development rights for this property. Thomas was kind enough to affirm it. Doesn't have the details, but you know, I think from that perspective, the county had the opportunity to say they didn't want this parcel developed and didn't take advantage of that opportunity. Certainly if the adjacent parcel that fronts Richmond Road were to be developed, this would be an opportunity to actually have some residential that could support the mixed use opportunities or business opportunities on the front parcel, and connectivity could be made there. So I was reviewing some of the other land use applications that we'll be discussing tonight, and where it's low density residential and there's opportunities to create moderate density. You know, I would be more in favor of leaving some of those other parcels low density and leaving this within the PSA as part of low density. And again, in support of what we're trying to accomplish here as far as some of the scenario B planning. I know what talks about taking some of these pieces out of the PSA, but this is really, you know, I don't even know if it's a football field into Forge Road, possibly, but I just think that with only 28 acres of this parcel farmed, you know, we're just seeing not a lot of other uses for this parcel other than, maybe becoming a solar farm, which I'm not sure other people want that live on Forge Road.
Thank you, Tim. And this is my neighborhood, so I'm going to apologize ahead of time for a number of comments that I wanted to make on this, and I have to say that of the 27 land use applications, I think I struggled with this one the most because I see the value of rural lands, but I also I feel that this should remain unchanged, that it should remain inside the PSA and as low density residential land use. And I feel that way because, one of the key principles in our deliberations is to put growth in the PSA. And this is an existing parcel inside the PSA. Low density residential, I would not support anything higher than that. This, in my opinion, would make a good transition parcel between the village of Toano and rural lands. And I got some numbers. And just to give you an idea of its proximity to Richmond Road, at its narrowest point, this parcel is 620 feet from Richmond Road. That's the length of a long driveway in some cases. And at its widest point, which is where the parcel touches Forge Road, it's 1,100 feet. So to me, it's very, very close, and it really supports the complete community concepts. It would be within walking distance to the village. It's close to police, fire, schools, and the middle of Toano, if Toano is revitalized. It's near employment areas such as the Stonehouse, Hankins, and Toano industrial parks. VDOT has already planned a crosswalk at the intersection of Forge Road and Richmond Road as part of the stormwater and roadway improvement project. It's a partnership project with VDOT and the county. And I do think it would help the revitalization efforts. In my opinion, redrawing the PSA, and by the way, we talk about how land use designations are down the road in the future and doesn't really have an impact on a landowner until they attempt to rezone a parcel. Well, if we recommend that the PSA be redrawn and that gets changed, that effect will go into place this year. I mean, it's even, that's sort of immediate, and I don't think that's the way how we should treat this parcel. I think moving it out of the PSA will not change the residential development component. What it would do, for example, on this parcel, and not knowing the topography, say 9 or 10 good-sized residential lots would be placed in there as is, using hypothetically county water and sewer. If we moved the PSA line and it was outside the PSA, you could still have that same number of lots, and you'd have, I think, some added environmental impact because all the lots would have to have well and septic. Another potential is that you could have even more intense residential development outside of the PSA if you went to a rural residential cluster. Granted, that would require an SUP, and granted, that would probably require a communal well. But the point I'm trying to make is that changing this parcel won't necessarily impact residential development. I think that'll still happen. And speaking of residential development, the 2006 Toano Design Guidelines on page 5 shows a map of the Toano area. And at the end of Forge Road, they have a conceptual street grid with 4 major parcels indicating some residential development. So even the Toano Design Guidelines are making allowances somewhere at the end of Forge Road, if not on this parcel, on the other parcel that Tim referred to, for some residential development. And then my final point is that I see some similarities between this parcel and the one we discussed last night, item number 15, west between Westport and Centerville. You know, both parcels are inside the PSA. Both parcels are designated currently low density residential. Both parcels are almost identical sizes. And the county recommended that the Westport parcel stay in the PSA so to allow for by right development in the PSA and because it was close to other residential developments. So I apologize for talking so long, but after a lot of consideration, that's why I'm going to recommend that this parcel remain as it is inside the PSA as low density residential. Any other comments?
Mr. Chairman, I'd like to make a motion on LU 20-0018 that it remain in the PSA.
Thank you, Frank. Ellen, would you please call the roll?
Yes, Mr. Crop.
Aye.
Mr. Haldeman.
Aye.
Ms. Leverins.
Aye.
Ms. Null.
Aye.
Mr. O'Connor.
Aye.
Mr. Polster.
Aye.
Dr. Rose.
Aye.
Ms. Wortman.
Aye.
Motion carries. Thank you.
Thank you. All right. LU 20-0019, Anderson's Corner.
Great. This is you once again. LU 20-0019 is also a Scenario B initiated application. This application is for the Anderson Corner parcels adjacent to existing mixed use and economic opportunity. And these parcels account for approximately 67 acres, are zoned for agricultural or business use. And for clarity, what we hope is clarity, staff has separated these parcels into two groups. The first group consists of the parcels that are contiguous to Anderson's Corner, which are designated for low density residential, and the second group are not contiguous to Anderson's Corner and are designated for general industry. All of the parcels are being proposed for being changed to mixed use Anderson's Corner. There are parcels within this application that do align with the key land use policy ideas recommended as a result of public input received during Engage 2045. Specifically, this proposal provides for redesignating residential land to mixed use within the primary service area in support of the complete communities concept. The projected traffic congestion for this area is expected to be low. Finally, the proposed land use designation contains development standards and clear expectations regarding design that will guide any future legislative applications to ensure the preservation of the established community character of the area. It is staff's recommendation that Group 1 parcels, which are contiguous to Anderson's Corner and are located at the top of the screen, be changed to mixed use Anderson's Corner, while the Group 2 parcels, which is at the bottom of the screen, do not be changed as part of this application due to the fact that they are not contiguous with the current Anderson's Corner mixed use designation. Staff has received public comments for this application, which have been provided within your packet, and we are happy to answer any questions you may have. Thank you.
Thank you. Any questions for staff? I apologize, it takes me a while to find the hand that's up in the air. Okay, Frank.
Not for staff.
Oh, okay. Tim?
Just one question. Was it Mr. Hertzler who wanted to keep this parcel as it is? Just, I apologize. I didn't have time to go back and look at it. So he's in sync of keeping it where it is today.
Yes.
Thank you.
And he's the Group 2 parcel at the bottom left of the screen.
Correct. Thanks.
Mm-hmm. I don't see any other questions. So Frank, go ahead.
With exactly the point that Tim had, and I want to thank Tom very, very much for reaching out 3 different times and finally having a conversation with Mr. Hertzler and going through that and breaking this into 2 pieces. I think it also applies to the other parcel, which is AA Plumbing, which has a business back there too. So I think that makes sense in terms of the Hankins piece across there. So I'm very happy to see that staff separated that out. As far as the upper parcels, I'm happy with the language that staff has put into the 3 different areas on Anderson Corner, both the EO and these other pieces that they're going to look at. I'm not thrilled about it, but at least the language is there to protect the traffic piece on 30 and on 60 and that piece. So I intend to support without having the George and plumbing piece inside to remain in the business.
Okay, thank you, Frank. So you're supporting the staff recommendation of Group 1 and Group 2 and the recommendations that they made.
Exactly, sorry.
No, that's fine. I just want to make sure we're all together on that. Any other comments? If not, Frank, you have the floor and you're welcome to make a motion.
Mr. Chairman, I make a motion that LU 20-0019 is approved as the staff is delineated between parcels on the lower left side and parcels on the Anderson Corner side.
Great, thank you. Ms. Cook?
Mr. Croft.
Could I interrupt? So we're looking at mixed use for both of them, or mixed use for the upper ones and general industry for the lower ones?
General industry for the lower, mixed use for the upper.
Okay, thank you.
The motion.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Okay, Ms. Cook?
Mr. Croft.
Aye.
Mr. Haldeman.
Aye.
Ms. Lebrons.
Aye.
Ms. Knoll.
Aye.
Mr. O'Connor.
Aye.
Mr. Polster.
Oh, aye.
Dr. Rose.
Aye.
Ms. Wortman.
Aye.
Motion carried. Thank you.
Thank you. All right, next we move on to LU 0020, parcels adjacent to Colonial Heritage on Richmond Road.
Thank you, Mr. Croft. LU-20-0020 is a Scenario B initiated application and located at 6925 and 7101 Richmond Road. The parcels total to 32 acres, zoned B1 general business, and is located inside the PSA. The current land use designation is community commercial. The proposed land use designation is mixed use, Lightfoot. Currently, the parcels are used for commercial uses. Staff recommends approval of this application with modification of the mixed use designation. This application aligns with the key land use policy ideas recommended as a result of public input received during Engage 2045. Specifically, this proposal provides for redesignated land to mixed use within the primary service area. This change will also allow for the pursuit of the complete communities concept in this area, given the MU designation also permits residential development that is compatible with the adjacent commercial uses. Staff has received public comments for this application and is happy to answer any questions you may have. Thank you.
Thank you, Tom. Any questions for staff on this one? All right, any discussion? Jack.
This, in our discussions on Monday, we talked about this section of Route 60 being a significant traffic problem from here in through the Centerville Road and the 199 intersection. And then, of course, Lightfoot is a growing problem. Transferring this to mixed use will increase traffic, certainly. Is anybody concerned about that, or should we be?
This is Jenny. I raised that question myself because it appeared to me that the mixed use description indicates that moderate to high density residential uses of up to 18 units per acre are possible, unless I misunderstood something. And that that gave me pause.
Good point. Frank?
I I agree with both Ginny and Jack. And once again, is if you take a look at both the alternate future and the future scenario B, from Lightfoot intersection all the way up past the Pottery to the Colonial, so it's both 20 and 27, it's severe. And once again, it's unless you put 8 lanes in there, it's never going to get better. And putting residential will just exacerbate a problem that's going to keep on giving. Thank you.
Thank you. Other comments? Jack, Ginny, Frank?
I'm sorry, I left my hand up, but.
Okay, that's all right. Tim.
You know, my personal opinion is that if we, you know, understanding that there's going to be in an adjacent parcel, you know, an assisted living facility, that, you know, mixed use might be a very good use for this. So, you know, to sort of complement that complete community where you might have folks who are in the service industry living there who could just walk right along Richmond Road and either go across the street to some of the retail areas or work at the assisted living facility. So I would be much more in favor of mixed use here than just leaving it as a business opportunity.
As community commercial. And let me ask staff, to Tim's point, the part of your recommendation to go mixed use Lightfoot would include rewording the MU designation. Any thoughts along lines how you would be addressing in your rewording, how you would be addressing maximum dwelling units in the mixed use, to Ginny's point of 18 per acre? What is staff thinking of as far as what they would be putting in the revised description?
I may have to flip down to either Ellen or Thomas. They're a little bit more involved in that.
Okay. And Ellen or Thomas, either one.
I can jump in. I don't know that there was specific language we already had in mind for this one, but it's certainly, as you pointed out a moment ago, there's the ability to include language that might recommend a certain level of density or certain uses for a particular portion of the mixed use area.
Okay. All right. Thank you, Ellen. I think I saw another hand. Ginny, did you still have a question? Or
yes.
Yes.
Thank you. The staff recommendation, I'm just going to Ellen, what Ellen just said. The staff recommendation has approval with modification of the mixed use designation. And so now I'm wondering what that modification, I'm not clear on that modification. So sorry about that.
And yeah, Ellen, if you wanted to elaborate at all, I know one of the components might still be open-ended based on the motion that is made, but did you have any thoughts along those lines, Ellen?
If I could, and Ellen, I certainly don't mean to interrupt you, but I think anytime we revise a mixed use area within the county to include more property, we would always look at the language and make sure that the description would include that land, or at least reference it where appropriate. So I think that was part of the reason that was part of the motion. There may be other specifics that Ellen wants to add on, but I think that was at least the genesis for that language there.
Okay. Rob?
Yeah, thanks. I'm going to add what I think is maybe an unpopular opinion here. I'm less moved by the issues of traffic that have been raised. Honestly, I feel like when we talk about development, it's in general, the idea of moving more development into the PSA in places that are already developed seem a good idea. And if we're that concerned about traffic, we need to be thinking about how we should be making changes to make this a more pedestrian, bike-friendly community rather than, oh, we need to widen roads because we're going to have some more traffic. And I'm not sure that helps, but it kind of keeps occurring to me as we've gone through some of these discussions.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. All of these inputs are good, and and all of the inputs end up oftentimes blending into a better motion than what would have been there beforehand. So thank you for that. Let's see, Tim.
I'd just like to tack on to Dr. Rose's point too. Just south of this parcel, but in front of Colonial Heritage is the bus stop. So to contribute to what Dr. Rose is suggesting, this is on a major thoroughfare, and it's right on the water route with a bus stop nearby. So to me, that's an advantage, another advantage that this parcel offers.
Okay, thank you, Jack.
To respond to Tim's points about this could be a good residence for people who work in the assisted living and at Colonial Heritage and across the street at retail. That implies affordable housing, and I don't know if the plan is to write that into the standards, some requirement for a minimum number of affordable housing units. But that's one. The other thing is that the existing comprehensive plan, the one we're changing, has made the point that Richmond Road cannot be widened through this area. They strongly recommend against it, in other words. And I don't know if that means that it can't be widened enough just for a bike lane along the side. Maybe that wasn't part of the discussion, but this area is, of course, fully developed from Croker Road all the way to 199, and it's just there's no way to mitigate a traffic problem once it develops. So there you are.
Okay, thank you. Thanks, Jack. Anyone else? Rob, did you still have your hand up, or?
Sorry.
That's all right. That's all right. And Jack, same with you?
Yeah, same with me. Sorry. Guilty.
Okay. No, that's all right. I personally could support a mixed-use designation using the complete communities model, but the only way I would support that would be if there was strong language saying that any residential component should be at the lowest end of the allowable density.
What about affordable housing? Would that be a requirement too, Rich? Or
I think we could say emphasis should also be something like emphasis should also include affordable housing, but I think we run into the dilemma on that. We can't stipulate, I don't think, a percentage, and I'll turn to staff because that's a proffered item.
They did it for the Moortown Road, Hill Pleasant Farm economic opportunity zone.
But that was because the definition of economic opportunity said less than 15%, but it did also say workforce housing, didn't it, Jack?
Yes, it did.
Yeah, okay, I'm sorry. Let's see, Barbara, and then Ginny. Oh, excuse me. Because the question's hanging out there, let me go to Paul, who has his hand up.
Yeah, thank you very much, Mr. Chairman, members of the working group. So, if it helps the discussion, I'm not sure I would recommend including specific language in this one in particular, specific to workforce and affordable housing. I think the EO one across the way and sort of that comparison, I think that's a one-off versus a standard to replicate. I think certainly as part of this comp plan update, the conversation, the GSAs, the goals, the intent to have workforce and affordable housing as a part of all new residential development proposals sort of cuts across the county ubiquitously. That was certainly the recommendation and the intent and the vision of the Workforce Housing Task Force, is not to have specific parcels designated anymore solely for 100% communities dedicated exclusively to workforce and affordable housing. I think some of the success of the Workforce Housing Task Force, and if you think back to some of those vision statements, and the goal of that was to have mixed income communities. And so I don't think you have that. I think the sort of the next evolution of the housing opportunities policy and sort of what that looks like translated into the zoning ordinance and submittal requirements, we're going to get to that pretty quickly when we move into the implementation piece. If you, my thought would be, if you make that distinguishing characteristic as part of this one and not the others, then somebody might infer, well, then you don't need it on all these other ones that we've been talking about. And so I think the stronger message is that's a county-wide important value. I think to the earlier question, Ms. Wortman's question about sort of subject to modification and the ability to custom tailor some text to this mixed use language, you know, if a majority of the working group feels comfortable with more of the moderate density residential, I think exactly as you inferred, you know, we can certainly write into that, whether it's that upper grouping or with the recommendation that development seek to stay at that lower tier of moderate density residential. You know, again, we didn't sort of go, I think staff's earlier response was we didn't go in and sort of pre-designate those all over. But if you all are comfortable with some density here, but maybe not the maximum one, I think that could be more helpful guiding principle language as part of this description that would get you that, but would maybe ensure that a future rezoning proposal doesn't try to maximize that out. Again, if that's a concern for a majority of the working group.
Okay, thank you, Paul. Barbara, you've been very patient. Go ahead.
Yeah, well, since I live in colonial heritage, I'm going to tell you one thing that will happen is if it is zoned that they can get a high density project in there, you're going to have a lot of pushback. And if anything says anything about affordable housing, it's going to go crazy. I know it works better when you just have a percentage of a certain development being with affordable units in it and so forth. Mm-hmm. And all along there, you know, are these little businesses. I don't know if it really is that great for residential at that point. Plus, living there right now, I mean, traffic is traffic, but we can always get out onto 60. It's kind of scary, but because the light is offset there at the Pottery, and we can't use that road any longer, and we shouldn't have used it to begin with. Another thing that to keep in mind is that that place across the street where they race the cars. Mm-hmm. It's extremely noisy when they're working. I can hear it, and I live 2 miles from the front gate. So I don't know that it really is a great area to put residential properties. Okay. That's my 2 cents.
Thank you, ma'am. Ginny and then Frank.
Thank you. I apologize for further complicating this, but I'm going to do it anyway. So this proposal recommends the current land use designation of community commercial be changed to mixed use Lightfoot.
Right.
Mm-hmm. Number 27, which is just down the road, is already mixed use Lightfoot and is recommended moderate density residential. And even though the staff wrote me a nice answer as to why this makes sense, I haven't been able to wrap my arms around it. So we're taking one mixed use parcel and recommending it be moderate density, and another community commercial and making it be mixed use. And I'm sorry, I don't get it.
I think that's a good question. Staff? Paul? You're muted. Okay, go ahead, Paul.
I'm sorry, this is actually Thomas, and I certainly don't want to step in on Paul here, but yeah, for 20 and 27, both of those were scenario B initiated applications, which was the genesis for both of them. And certainly understand the question about, or the thinking that might be a bit inconsistent. If I may, it might make more sense to separate them out and do each individual presentation. I can try to just give a general broad answer here that for 27, changing that from its designation of mixed use Lightfoot to moderate density residential would address some of the potential concerns about there being some strip commercial development in that location. And that is not something that would be supported under a moderate density residential. Certainly not the intention of the mixed use designation either, but it's possible that there could be some more assurance of preventing that with going more to the moderate density residential use. It may be beneficial to wait till we get to that item, certainly not trying to cut off any discussion. But that was one of the bigger distinctions between 27 and number 20, where for number 20, we would be going from a purely commercial designation to one that could include some residential. But I do agree, it's a bit, it's a lot of information there. And I know that we had gotten our answer out to you only an hour or so before the meeting. So hopefully that's a little bit helpful, but it might be best to work through each presentation one at a time.
Okay. All right. Paula, your hand is up. Now it's down. Oh, all right. Frank, did you have a comment?
Yeah, Jenny, I don't get it either. And this goes to a comment that Tim made and both Jack, is one of the reasons why I was in favor initially for both 27 and 20 was the idea that we could close the gap that we have between we're doing a good job on affordable housing, but you're not doing enough. And both these properties, 20 and 27, on a main highway, near shopping areas, Harris Teeter, et cetera, plus the colonial heritage next to their facility, their care facility, had plans to put a shopping center in there plus some other strip mall type thing. So to Tim's point, it's on a main highway. The people who work at the facility could have an opportunity to have affordable housing, both in 20 and 27, and walk to work and not increase the traffic that's an issue and will continue to be an issue. And so if the county actually got affordable housing out of 20 and 27, it could close that gap and given all the other development that's there and future development that the colonial heritage folks are going to have, it makes sense. But without those assurances, which Jack asked about, or the notion that it's a pig in a poke and we'll have to figure it out, I don't see how it makes any sense. I don't know what the county gets out of it. I don't know what the citizens get out of it in terms of the affordable housing gap. Thank you.
Thanks, Frank. Any other comments? All right. Well, we have a proposal on the table that calls for changing the land use designation on this parcel from community commercial to mixed use Lightfoot, with staff making some, I would think, substantial edits to the mixed use description for this area, addressing residential, and I heard, or addressing density, and I heard Paul recommend against stipulating affordable housing. Could it be general enough to say future development is encouraged to consider an affordable and workforce housing component, or is even that, Paul, a little more specific than you'd recommend?
Well, again, I think calling it out as a specific requirement you may not want to do, but remember, I'm thinking back to some of the ones we talked about on Monday night, where we sort of talked about the importance of certain things to mitigate. Based on the conversation so far, I think including some language in this one that speaks to the importance of this area and this corridor in particular meeting the county's workforce housing goals could again sort of stress the importance of while it's important countywide, this area in particular seems well suited for it, and again sort of turn it into an affirmative statement. And again, I think that would help cement the idea versus making it a distinguishing thing that if we don't have that in all the other ones, maybe you don't want it anywhere else but only here.
Okay. Frank, did you have an additional question?
Yeah, I like Paul's piece, and I've talked about this before when we talked about this area before, is if you can take the language and into the light use, mixed use corridor and put that kind of description in the same way you have descriptions about what you want Anderson Corner to look like and Croker Corner to look like, or any of the other corridors. And that the fact is that you would like affordable housing if that language was there within the Lightfoot mixed use corridor as a whole, which would paint a vision of what we want that to look like. So I wouldn't have to figure out between 20 and 27. I would have an idea about what you want to do, the extent of the corridor, and be consistent about it. Then I'd be okay.
Okay. And I hear Paul saying that by making it more affirmative, that it supports the county priorities for workforce housing. I think that's the phrase you used. That is the implication that affordable housing would be an important component. Without saying it's an important component is what I'm hearing.
Can we see the language of it at some point? I mean, not now.
Yeah.
I mean, I've asked for that kind of language before, so I'd like to be able to make sure we have it there.
Yeah, you've been very good about advocating for word pictures for these very specific areas, whether it be Croker or Anderson's Corner or down here. So, and I think that is very, very helpful, Frank, to do that. So, and staff, would that's something that you can bring forward as this process moves along? That we'll get to see, obviously, the revised language and more of a descriptor of the physical characteristics of this area?
Yes, it'll be just like the ones from Monday night. Okay. So we'll keep them all bundled up. Yep.
Okay. All right. Good. All right. In that case, may I have a motion? Frank, would you care to be on the hot seat for that?
Sure. Let me make sure I know which one we've got here.
Number 10.
Right. I'm sorry, I got the dogs barking here. Mr. Chairman, I'd like to make a motion for LU. All right. Tim and I have the same problem with dogs. Just not well behaved, okay?
They're just supporting you. There you go.
Mr. Chairman, I'd like to make a motion for LU 20-0020 that we approve the staff recommendation with the proviso that they provide the language in the land use standards piece for this corridor. Thank you.
Good, thank you. Ms. Cook, would you call the roll, please?
Mr. Kropp?
Aye.
Mr. Haldeman?
No.
Ms. Leverins?
Aye.
Ms. Knoll?
No.
Mr. O'Connor?
Aye.
Mr. Colster?
Aye.
Dr. Rose?
Aye.
Ms. Wortman?
Aye.
Motion carries. Thank you.
Thank you. All right, number 21, parcels adjacent to Long Hill Road and Centerville Road.
Before we start, this is Rob. I apologize. I have to jump off.
Okay, thank you, Rob.
Good night, Rob.
Talk to y'all soon.
Hi, Rob.
All right, Tom or Thomas?
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Croft. LU-20-0021 is a Scenario B initiated application and located at 6226 Centerville Road, 3900 and 4050 Long Hill Road. The parcels total to 311 acres, zoned A1 General Agriculture and R8 Rural Residential, and are located inside the PSA. The current land use designation is low density residential. The proposed land use designation is moderate density residential. Currently, the parcels are vacant. Staff recommends approval of this land use designation change. This application aligns with the key land use policy ideas recommended as a result of public input received during the Engage 2045. Specifically, this proposal provides a redesignation of low density residential to an increased density within the PSA. The projected traffic congestion for Centerville Road is expected to be moderate, while the projected congestion on Long Hill Road is expected to be low. Staff has received public comments for this application and is happy to answer any questions you may have. Thank you.
Thank you, Tom. Any questions for staff? All right. How about just general discussion? Here we go.
I have a question.
Oh, okay, Jenny, go ahead.
How much of this land is in the RPA?
I do not have that number. Thomas, do you know off the top of your head?
I don't. It's a great question. I don't have the approximate acreage, and I don't know if we have property information available to pull it up, but a good portion of it does have RPA. And if I'm remembering correctly, I believe actually where that red number 21 is on the screen, there's RPA that essentially separates the two pockets of land. So I don't know if we have property info available, and I can try to do some quick calculations potentially right now, but there's enough RPA where it would impact exactly where development could go.
Jenny, I can tell you that the upper parcel to the north is flat, but all the rest of it crisscrosses, and the bottom part, this is all part of the Powhatan watershed. The bottom half of that thing is crisscrossed all the way, and they're all headwaters, which means that there's more problem downstream when you develop.
So 311 acres of moderate to high density residential could be a whole bunch of housing units.
Oh, it's worse than that. It's 3,613 people that we're talking about putting in there based on the scenario B.
Does that, that's why I asked about the RPA. Does that take account of the land that can't be developed?
Well, I can't answer that. Vlad will have to answer that. That's their estimate for what they think they can put in there.
Yeah, okay. Okay, thank you.
I can just add real quick, the 311 acres is the total parcel acreage. So that would include any area within RPA.
Yes, I understood that. I was just trying to figure out how much of it was developable. Thank you.
Yeah, good question. Let's see. Jack,
Rich,
I'm sorry.
Tim.
Go ahead, Tim.
I'm sorry, I had to transfer to my phone, so I'm having a little bit of challenge with raising my hand. But this is the one parcel in particular when I spoke about Forge Road. Early in the process, I was supportive of this being moderate density just because of the proximity to schools and the War Hill tract and other services and the like. But as I reviewed the application and the like, this is one where I think keeping it at a low density is probably beneficial from a land use and a traffic perspective. So I would vote in favor of keeping it as it is and not moving it to moderate or high density.
Okay, thank you. Jack?
My sentiments exactly. I think this is a horrible location for moderate or high density housing. It's too far out from the core. It promotes sprawl development. It's going to be a traffic problem. As Frank pointed out, it's going to be a downstream environmental problem and erosion problem. And I can't think of a single positive attribute for this. It's just a really, really bad idea.
And I am inclined to agree with Jack and Tim. And Frank, you have your hands up.
I just wanted to make sure that Barb Knoll knew, because she's still on the call, that the congestion level for this is red, but it also impacts on the Jolly Pond Road. And where the entrance to the north is to this property, because it's the only way that you can access it because of the RPA issues on Long Hill across there, is just south of where you come out onto Centerville from Colonial Heritage.
I see that and I'm aware of it, and I think it's a horrible idea.
Well, and for Rob, and I wish he was here, is we have that entire length of Centerville from it, I know at least from Long Hill all the way up to Lightfoot. It has a bicycle thing. And so one of the things that the historic colonial traffic guys talked about is the only alternative, and they don't recommend it, is to widen the road from 2 to 4 lanes. And I think that wrecks the entire rural notion about what that road is all the way down. So I just am not supportive of this at all, obviously. Thank you.
And neither am I.
Yeah, okay, all righty. Let's see, any other comments?
Just can we note that Frank, Jack, and I are aligned on an application?
That's almost as rare as Haley's comment, but in that case, may I have a motion from someone?
Mr. Chairman, I'll make a motion that LU 20-0021 is denied.
Okay, and it retains its current land use designation.
Retains its current LDR. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Ms. Cook?
Mr. Kropp?
Aye.
Mr. Haldeman?
Aye.
Ms. Leverins?
Aye.
Ms. Knoll?
Aye.
Mr. O'Connor?
Aye.
Mr. Polster?
Aye.
Ms. Wortman?
Aye.
Motion carries. Thank you.
Thank you. 21 down, 6 to go. All right. LU 0022.
Thank you, Mr. Kropp. LU 20-0022 is a Scenario B initiated application and located at 5405 and 5427 Old Town Road. The parcels total to 28 acres, zoned R2 general residential, and are located inside the PSA. Current land use designation is low density residential. The proposed land use designation is moderate density residential. Currently, the parcels are vacant. Staff recommends approval of this land use designation change. This application aligns with the key land use policy ideas recommended as a result of the public input received during the Engage 2045. Specifically, this proposal provides for redesignating low density residential to an increased density within the PSA. Staff has received public comments for this application and is happy to answer any questions you may have. Thank you.
Thank you, Tom. Any questions for staff? All right, any comments or discussion?
I think this is the second worst of the applications.
Yes. I agree.
Not as bad as the last one, but.
Oh my God, this is awful. Okay.
All right, since everybody's on the fence on this one, would you care to make a motion, Mr. Haldeman?
Well, I would just offer real quick, Rich.
Oh, Tim, go ahead. I'm sorry. Go ahead.
No, that's fine. I apologize.
Tim,
but,
we had it going here. You're not gonna mess it up, are you?
Well, if the current designation is general is residential, and we're not, the property owners have the ability to make that choice, and obviously they would have to address any impacts for road or RPA or topography or any of these other things. So, I'm not as opposed to it in a broad sense, because we're not taking it out of the PSA. We're not downgrading the current zoning and use of the property unless I misunderstand the application. So, I don't know that it hurts to allow it to be considered for moderate density, because it could just be a smaller portion of that property that gets developed in a cluster fashion versus, something that would take up the whole piece with larger lots. So, I'm generally not opposed to the moderate density here, because I think there's enough protections and offsetting if that were to be developed at a higher intensity.
Okay, thank you, Tim. Ginny?
But there is a floor on moderate density, right?
Yeah, what's the density range? Because I don't remember off the top of my head. Is it 4 is the upper limit for the low density, and so moderate density?
Is that the lower limit for the moderate?
Yeah, that's my question. And maybe Ellen, is that what it is?
Yeah, that's the recommended. The floor is to start at 4. Certainly, as guidance language, there's the ability for the Planning Commission and board to vary from that, but certainly that's the language as it is in the comp plan.
Okay.
And if somebody wanted to do a cluster, could they do it under the LDR?
Yes, there is the ability to apply for a cluster overlay within like an R2 zoning under the LDR designation.
Okay. In that case, I'm with the let's keep it as low density residential group.
Okay. Frank, let's see. Frank, did you have an additional comment?
Yeah, I just wanted to say that, one of the things that Paul's talked to us about is that whatever we decide on, there's this legislative process that continues afterwards. And I thought about that. And, I've only been on a board for 3 years. But one of the things that I learned from you, Rich, was that every time we review an SUP applications, one of the first things that you talk about, is it consistent with the comp plan? And we go from there. Mm-hmm. And so what I don't want to happen with this is for us to make a decision that will make it consistent with the comp plan of 2045. If somebody wants to come in, as Tim suggested, one of the 4 parcels or whatever, and wants to make a legislative SUP, change it to something else, let them do it. But I don't think that we ought to decide on this piece of property that we're going to allow them to have that higher density without going through that process. So I don't want to get into that fix of, well, is it in the comp plan or not? And if it is, well, then why am I objecting to it? Mm-hmm. So I just leave it at that, Rich.
Okay. And so you're essentially, you're indicating that you're leaning towards leaving it as at low density and let it evolve?
Leave it as it is, and if somebody wants to change it, that's their right. Let them do it, but let them go through the process, and we'll evaluate whatever it is, but not all 3 or 4 parcels at one time a priori.
Mm-hmm. Okay. All right. Good point. Julie.
Yes, thank you. We've been saying for years that it's time for us to be proactive about where we want to have the higher density residential. And staff has done that. And no matter what we do, there are going to be people who object to higher density, anything, anywhere. But I'm inclined to go with staff on this and say staff has taken a look at properties in the county and has looked at what might be appropriate for moderate density. And I'm going to support that.
Okay, thank you. My one concern, and I don't have anything to quantify it, is that it seems like for the most part, vacant parcels, throughout all of these land use applications are being ramped up from low to moderate density in a lot of different areas. And I probably should have thought at the beginning of this process to say, well, what's the potential cumulative addition of residential units if we're picking all of these vacant in the PSA parcels and ramping them up a bit. On the one hand, it gives more choice to what you said, Julia. It gives more variety as to where in the county the growth could occur. But are we building in a lot of extra density that we might regret down the road? I don't know.
Well, that's the point of this scenario B. And in this one, it increases it by 664. It's the same thing about the last one we talked about, 3,613. So the question is do you want to jam 40,000 more people into the PSA? Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. And by and large, everything that we've heard from our citizens say no. I mean,
particularly with this one got a very high no from a resident.
I mean, let alone the traffic. I mean, even though Vlad's thing doesn't show anything, the historic triangle shows this as a moderate. And that curve is, that's nasty if you've ever driven that thing. And to put more on it on the other side of another residential area and develop the whole thing, you're asking for a problem. But that's not the issue here. Let somebody go through the legislative process and change it. And I don't want to deny anybody their rights.
And to your point, you're exactly correct. As a land use application can come forward, and even though the application, it doesn't matter what the application is for, it can deviate from the comp plan because the comp plan is a recommendation. And if the reasons are good enough, then that's fine. A comp plan's a recommendation. It's not an ordinance. It's not legally binding or anything like that. So what you're saying is when the time comes, the need is there, even though the land use designation might be low density, there's still the ability to do a higher density rezoning.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Okay, good. This is a very good discussion. Anybody else? In that case, may I have a motion on LU-20-0022?
Mr. Chairman, I make a recommendation that LU-20-0022 not go into an MDR.
Okay, thank you, sir. Ms. Cook?
Mr. Krupp?
Aye.
Mr. Haldeman?
Aye.
Ms. Leverins?
No.
Ms. Knoll?
Aye.
Mr. O'Connor?
Streak of one, no.
Mr. Colson?
We really had it going there, Tim.
Tim, I'm disappointed. I thought we were on a roll. Aye.
Okay, and Ms. Wortman?
Sorry, aye.
Motion, thank you. Motion carries.
Okay, thank you. LU-20-0023, the parcel on News Road. I'll turn it over to Thomas or Tom.
Thank you, Mr. Kropp. LU 20-2023 is a Scenario B initiated application for a parcel on News Road that is located at 3889 News Road. This parcel accounts for approximately 179 acres and is zoned for residential planned community use. For context, this parcel is undeveloped, but has been considered for conceptual change to the Ford's Colony Master Plan to allow for the village at Ford's Colony. Currently, this parcel is approved for a continuing care retirement community containing approximately 741 senior housing units. The proposed conceptual amendment to the master plan would result in a total of approximately 550 units, which would result in a density less than 4 units per acre. Of course, that's within the density range for the low density residential designation, which is this property's current designation. The proposed change would designate this property for moderate density residential. Staff finds this application does generally align with the key land use policy ideas recommended as a result of public input received during Engage 2045. Specifically, this proposal provides for redesignating certain low density residential parcels to an increased density within the PSA. However, due to the substantial environmental constraints on site, staff finds a mix of unit types at higher density could likely be achieved on the developable portion, while the overall density on the parcel remains within the range recommended by low density residential. For these reasons, staff recommends denial of this application. Staff is happy to answer any questions you may have, and I'll turn it over to you all.
Thank you. Thank you, Thomas. Jack, you've had your hand up first. Go ahead.
You know, Tom just actually answered my question. Thank you.
Okay. Frank?
Tom, I want to go back to the history of this and make sure that I understand it, because I'm a little confused, like Jenny was, about why we even got this on the agenda here to be considered. And do I understand that this project was approved in 2008, and it was for 741 senior units, of which 206 would be independent, with townhouses, 300, et cetera, et cetera. And so all of this has been done and approved and by right. Do I get that right?
I don't have the exact date for the approval, but the units you've listed, yes, those are correct. And to answer your first question, the genesis for this was the scenario B comparison, which is why it was.
Right. No. And it's also true that the DRC has heard this project twice, right? And in both cases, the continuing care facility was part of it, but the owner of the property was looking for somebody to do the development of the independent housing so that you could migrate from independent living to assisted living to hospital care. I mean, I think that's exactly what they were looking for. Right. And so the Ford's Colony community, which was consulted and heard about this, all said yes. So the question is whether or not they'll develop it or not. So why is it that we're even have this on the agenda to begin with when it's already, I mean, I guess the point is if somebody wants to change this thing, they can come in a legislative way and do that. But why would we force somebody to do something like that when it's already been decided?
But just to elaborate on what Thomas said a moment ago, the overall modeling, as you all recall, was not necessarily looking at existing entitlements. There was, vacant parcels and then these concepts that we all had talked about exploring, such as in some locations, changing the designation. Now, as you all are doing tonight, some of them may make sense to you all and others may not, but that was the original concept, is just to explore different locations for that possibility.
Okay, Ellen, I got that. So I want to go to the environmental piece. I'm sorry.
No, this is Paul. I was just going to echo on to what Ellen said. Because some of these considerations in the Scenario B plan weren't tied to specific development proposals, it's really on here in the absence of either one of those development proposals proceeding. So, again, theoretically, neither the current one can decide not to proceed any further, and the one that has the oldest entitlement could just simply never be developed as well. And so, certainly the comp plan and the future land use map would want to be set aside for whatever a potential next application could be. And so, you know, to your point, if the DRC feels like the previous entitlement or currently the current iteration of the concept plan that's currently before you feels about right, then, you know, certainly the opportunity could be to leave it as LDR, because as Tom has mentioned, that density is going to be less than 4 units an acre anyway. But, you know, again, if you feel as a working group that in the absence of those, let's with the presumption that neither one of those happen, and you get a third thing come along in the future, you know, would you want to keep it under that 4 units an acre, or would you feel like this could be a spot that could do something a little bit more than 4 units an acre? So I think ultimately that's why it's on the agenda as well, just to follow up and add to what Thomas and Ellen previously just said.
Well, thank you, Paul. And so to the environmental point that you talked about, Tom, as you well know, I am absolutely rabid about the flooding issues on the Powhatan Creek, and especially about how it crosses News Road to the west of the property there. And as we went through the discussions at the DRC several times, I know that there are current in-place proffer agreements that require anybody, whoever takes on, to, you know, to Paul's point, but whoever comes into that thing, is they have to mitigate those issues as well as put some reports in. And of course, what was funny about this is that when we talked to the engineer who proposed this piece, he lived on the other side to the north and east, and he was flooded out and not able to cross News Road to the west because of the flooding. And so I get what you're saying about the environmental things, but I think that the current proffers that are in place and what the stormwater guys have put in place over the last 3 timeframes takes care of that issue. So I'm really not, I'm confused of why it's here, and I understand what Paul said, but I just soon allow the guys that own the property to allow them to develop it the way they see and how they propose in the DRC. Thank you.
Thank you, Frank. So from a land use designation standpoint, you're supportive of the LDR?
Actually, it's remaining the same that the current by right is.
Right. Okay.
Right.
Okay.
Me too.
All right.
Yeah.
So any other comments then? And seeing none, I'll look for a motion.
Boring, LU 20-0023, Mr. Chairman, I'd like to propose a denial and keep the land designation as is.
Okay. Okay. Thank you very much. Ms. Cook?
Can I ask you clarifying? So land use is low density residential?
Correct.
Correct. Thank you.
Ms. Cook?
Mr. Crum?
Aye.
Mr. Haldeman?
Aye.
Ms. Levin?
Aye.
Ms. Knoll?
Aye.
Mr. O'Connor?
Aye.
Mr. Colster?
Aye.
Ms. Wortman?
Aye.
Motion carries. Thank you.
Thank you. Next is 0024, parcels across from the rec center.
Thank you, Mr. Croft. LU-20-0024 is a Scenario B initiated application and located at 5232, 5252, and 5298 Long Hill Road. The parcels total to 29 acres, zoned R5 multifamily residential and R2 general residential, and are located inside the PSA. The current land use designation is low density residential. The proposed land use designation is moderate density residential. Currently, the parcels have some single-family residents on them, and one parcel is vacant. Staff recommends approval of this land use designation change. This application aligns with key land use policy ideas recommended as a result of public input received during Engage 2045. Specifically, the proposal provides for redesignating low-density residential land within the PSA to higher residential designations, which could allow for increased opportunities for affordable housing. This also aligns with directing growth towards infill development and redevelopment. Staff has received public comments for this application and is happy to answer any questions you may have.
Thanks, Tom. I do have a question, and I'm pulling out the letter that was submitted by Reed Nestor. He's the retired director of planning for the city of Williamsburg, and two points that he made in his letter, I'd like to get some staff feedback on. One of the points, and I'm just generally summarizing it, was even we're getting into some jurisdictional boundary issues, but he's saying that by upgrading this parcel from low density to moderate density, we're not looking at the surrounding neighborhoods, that the James City County development standards say that the development should be compatible with the density of nearby or adjoining developments. And his one argument was this is not compatible with the neighboring developments, even though it's in the city of Williamsburg. And then the other point that he brings out in his letter is that we've already ramped up the parcels around Eastern State for increased density. And there was some concern that this is going even further because of the proximity to the Eastern State parcels. And I'd be very interested in staff addressing the development principles compared to the actual development in the city of Williamsburg that adjoin these parcels, and whether we're starting to build too much density into this area with what we voted on Eastern State.
This is Ellen. I think as far as the exact layout of the parcels, should they be redesignated and then come in for rezoning, certainly that's something that staff routinely looks at, is a compatibility with adjacent parcels. And it's likely that, that's something that they would have to take into account and, potentially have some variation in density towards, lower density areas, or provide buffers or other similar measures. Mm-hmm. So that's part of it. I think overall, we looked at all the information that was included in the spreadsheet and making our recommendation as far as the second part of assessing the increase in intensity here.
Based on how Eastern State was voted and those parcels and so on, right?
Yes, and yeah, I don't know if Thomas or Tom would want to comment further. Didn't want to preclude their comments there.
Okay. Thank you, Ellen. Any other comments from staff? Okay. Just discussion in general. I'll look to my colleagues. Yes, Ginny.
Thank you. I'm actually in favor of this. I like it better than Eastern State.
Okay, good. All right, thank you. Frank and Jack and Barbara all had hands up, so we'll just go in that order.
I struggled with this one because this is probably the best opportunity for affordable housing. From a zoning perspective, one of the parcels is already R5. And the property adjacent to this property is already affordable housing. It's on a WADA main line. It's down the street from a grocery store and up on the other side of a pharmacy. And there's a rec center across there, which does daycare. And so just like the Richmond Road for 20 and 27, it has the potential. And so that's what bothers me. It has the potential to become something, to do something with affordable housing on this. And that's why I'm struggling about this. And so I'll just leave it at that. It has all the right features. I just wish there were some assurances that it could be like one of the parcels which are zoned R5. But I understand that's a zoning issue and that follows on. And so I'm moved in some ways that if we do make it that way, it can move legislatively to an R5, and maybe that's good enough.
Okay, good point. I know Barbara's on a timeline, so Jack, let me just bump Barbara up in the queue, if you don't mind.
I don't.
Okay.
Well, I agree with Jack. I think it's the perfect place to have affordable housing because it is near everything and it's across from the rec center. Plus, you've got all those townhouses to the left, which you said is affordable housing. I'm in favor of this one.
Okay. All right.
But I'm not going to be able to vote in 5 minutes. So.
Okay. All right. Jack?
I voted against Eastern State, and I started this exercise with just that idea that both of these would create a congestion problem. Mm-hmm. I did favor this one, and now I've got a problem because Eastern State was approved and this one, and I agree with the gentleman who wrote in about that being a congestion issue. So I haven't made up my mind yet, but I mean, I started off thinking this was that I was going to approve this, but we'll see. I don't know.
Okay. All right. And to Frank, one of Frank's earlier points, I mean, even if it stayed low density residential, if somebody came in with a very compelling proposal for a workforce or affordable project that would require a higher density, that's also very workable.
Mr. Chairman, I'll make a recommendation for LU 20-0024 that we approve the staff recommendation.
Okay. And okay, the staff recommendation is to approve transferring from low density residential to moderate density residential.
Yes.
Okay. Ms. Cook?
Yes. Mr. Kropp?
No.
Mr. Haldeman?
Yes.
Ms. Leverins?
Aye.
Ms. Knoll?
Aye.
Mr. O'Connor? Mr. O'Connor? I'll come back to him. Mr. Polster?
Aye.
Ms. Wortman?
Aye.
And Mr. O'Connor, if you're...
All right.
Okay, well, motion carried.
Motion carried. Okay, good. All right, thank you very much. Did Tim just jump on? Nope. Okay. Next we go to 0025.
Thank you, Mr. Kropp.
Yes, sir.
Land use application 25 is a scenario B initiated application that is located at 140 Waltrip Lane. This parcel accounts for approximately 17 acres, is zoned for rural residential, and is located inside the primary service area. The current land use designation is low density residential. The proposed land use designation is moderate density residential. Staff recommends approval of this proposed change. This application aligns with the key land use policy ideas recommended as a result of public input received during Engage 2045. Specifically, this proposal provides for the redesignation of land within the PSA from low density residential to moderate density residential, which could allow for increased opportunities for more affordable housing. Per VDOT's comments, the development of this parcel for more intense residential use could require the improvements of Lake Powell Road, which is to be carefully examined during any future legislative review in light of this potential designation change. It is likely that access would need to occur through parcels to the south rather than through Waltrip Lane. And staff's happy to answer any questions that you may have. Thank you.
Thank you. And I just saw a comment come in from Tim O'Connor. Let's see. I'm sorry, I'll have to, I have no audio, so it looks like Tim is off of the call then.
No, it just came back.
Oh, it just came back. All right.
I think there's a cell phone tower issue around here, so sorry. Back.
Okay, no problem. We're on the number 0025 Lake Powell Road, and staff just finished their summary, and I see Jack has his hand up. And you're muted, Jack.
Sorry, double guilty. I didn't mean to have my hand up, and I didn't mean to be muted, so.
Okay, all right. Any other, let's see, Frank?
For staff, I believe that there's an application's already been submitted and the guy's paid his money for something called the Homes at Wessex 100. Is that correct?
Staff did receive a conceptual plan for that proposal back in, I believe it was January or late December, but we haven't received a legislative application or anything beyond a conceptual plan.
And the concept plan for the Wessex 100, would you characterize it, please?
Certainly. I'm just trying to pull up my my frame of reference for that. Essentially, this was a conceptual plan that was submitted for the property, and the proposal, if I can get it pulled up quick enough, if you all can bear with me here, I'll try to find it. But essentially, it would be a rezoning to permit additional residential units on the property, and I believe the proposal was to rezone the property from its current zoning designation to the R5 zoning district, which would potentially permit more units on the site.
But it also spells out the number of units that they were looking to include townhouses and single homes, didn't it, Tom?
I believe it did. And I can keep looking to see if I can find it. I will say for the land use application review, the conceptual plan was considered a totally separate process, given that it's not a current legislative application or an improved entitlement on the parcel. So that wasn't included as part of the analysis for this one. But yes, I can try to see if I can find that comment letter.
But the board did suspend any kind of zoning applications until we finished the comp plan, right?
I believe the board passed a resolution that would not allow for rezonings that have a residential component to be heard by the board for a certain period of time.
Okay.
This was not actually submitted as a rezoning. It was only submitted as a conceptual.
Yeah, and so my point is that if somebody wants to make a change to a land, this is the winery guys unloading their property and then building something there, and it certainly won't be affordable housing from what I saw that was proposed. Did I get that right, Tom?
I don't believe the narrative included too many specifics about it. Let me back up. So for a conceptual plan, they only submit a very brief narrative and a layout of the property, but it's not like a community impact statement for rezoning where it goes into deep details about the affordable housing components that could be offered or things like that. So I'm afraid I just don't have that information at this time, not because it's not out there, but it just wasn't submitted as part of the conceptual.
No, I think that's fair. I mean, that's kind of the point, that this is designated as another affordable housing opportunity. And we have somebody that's applying for something that God knows what they're going to put there. But I guess my point is, let the legislative process work. Disapprove this thing and let them come in and let's see their application and make the decision with all the impacts that are, I mean, that's part of their right. But I don't think that we ought to a priori decide we want high density or affordable housing, period, without knowing what we're going to get. Thank you.
Yep. You're welcome. Jenny?
Yep, I'm opposed to this for a lot of reasons. One being Lake Powell Road, another being proximity to the airport. As a former pilot, I can tell you that having more high density right around that airport is not something that would be in favor of. And besides that, the smell from the mulch field would be awful. So I'm going to say, let's keep it low density residential.
Yep. I'm supportive of that as well, primarily because of the constraints on Lake Powell Road and the traffic potential congestion getting in and out of there onto 199 as well. But yeah, my preference is to keep it as low density residential. Any other discussion items or folks that want to make a comment?
I would just offer from a traffic perspective that, you know, we already have a struggle with 199 right there at Jamestown Road and 199. And I think high density or moderate density would contribute even worse to that. So I'd be in favor of keeping it low.
Yep. All right. Anybody else? All right. May I have a motion then?
Mr. Chairman, this is Jack regarding LU 20-0025 Lake Powell Road parcel. I make a motion to deny this application and to leave it as LDR.
Okay, thank you. Ellen?
Mr. Kropp?
Aye.
Mr. Haldeman?
Aye.
Ms. Leverins?
Aye.
Mr. O'Connor?
Aye.
Mr. Polster?
I think Tim's back on the team. Aye.
Ms. Wortman?
Aye.
Motion carries. Thank you.
Good, thank you. We're in the home stretch, 2 more to go. LU 20-0026 parcels on Ron Springs Drive. I'll turn to staff.
Thank you, Mr. Kropp. LU-20-0026 is a Scenario B initiated application and located at 200 and 150 Ron Springs Drive. Parcels total to 31 acres, zoned R2 general residential, and are located inside the PSA. The current land use designation is low density residential. The proposed land use designation is moderate density residential. Currently, the parcels are vacant. Staff recommends approval of this land use designation change. This application aligns with the key land use policy ideas recommended as a result of public input received during Engage 2045. Specifically, this proposal provides for redesignation of low-density residential land within the PSA to higher residential designation, which could allow for increased opportunities for more affordable housing. The projected traffic congestion for this area is expected to be low, and the improvement of Pocahontas Trail is expected to facilitate pedestrian and vehicular traffic in the future. Staff has received public comments for this application and is happy to answer any questions you may have. Thank you.
Okay. Thanks, Tom. Any questions for staff? Ginny, is your hand up?
Actually, it wasn't, but I did have a question, but it's more of a discussion item than for staff.
Okay, I don't see any other hands, so why don't you just jump in?
Okay. I'm certainly not opposed to the idea of making this moderate or high density residential, but this area is already like a food desert, right? Is there any prospect for any services that people would use, like grocery stores, to be moving into this area?
It's a good question.
I mean, what we're doing is packing a bunch of more people, possibly, into a place that they have to drive a long ways to get some decent food.
I'll ask staff, was this part of your analysis by any chance? Paul?
This is.
Oh, okay.
Go ahead, Ellen.
No, I'm sorry. Go ahead.
Well, I was going to say to Ms. Wortman's point, so it's just such an interesting question. So for the parcels here specifically, they're not going to lend themselves well to really a commercial designation for something like a grocery store, because you're at the end of a dead end road, and you don't have the visibility and you don't have the frontage right directly onto Pocahontas Trail. You know, it's interesting. I don't know that we've got a specific analysis. I don't know that some of that directly factored into the Excel spreadsheet that was shared with you as part of the agenda packet. But the really interesting question is, you know, I think the residents of Grove have long desired some additional shopping. It's long been known that there's been a desire to have a grocer of some scale closer to within the community, within walking distance, within biking distance down there. You know, to date, you know, it's been our understanding that those users need a certain population base to support the grocery store and to support that level of investment and to make it sustainable. So, you know, the interesting question, as you bring it up, is, well, gosh, should more folks move into Grove? And that may mean that we have even more people needing to drive to an area, or I don't know, you know, at some level, it would be interesting if you got a little bit more population and infill residential development, if you then started to have a little bit more critical mass to then support some more commercial investment in that area, or retail, or, you know, corner grocer or whatever. So, you know, sort of, it always sort of plays on itself. It's just hard to quantify it sometimes.
Yeah. Yeah, no, I wasn't thinking about this parcel for commercial use for exactly the reasons you said, but I like looking at the glass half full approach that you just mentioned. Thanks.
Good, thank you. Frank?
A couple comments. When Tori proposed this, because the property had been up for sale several times, I thought, what a wonderful opportunity for the county to make an investment. And most of you already know, I sent out this issue on equity, and specifically to reevaluate our decision-making process, which is what Jenny just brought up. It is a food desert. And so when you look at that map, to the south of the county is in worse shape than what Grove is. And of course, to the north of it is one of the richest sections of the county that we have that has Harris Teeter to go to. And there's nothing in between. The good news is that that area of Grove has been designated to hopefully provide those opportunities that may create some sort of a grocery store, pharmacy, those sort of services that the rest of our county has without exception. And so to put 222 more people into that situation without having a solution to what Jenny's talking about, or looking at an equity realignment, I can't support it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Good, thank you. Any other comments? I'm siding with Frank and Ginny on this. To me, it just will exacerbate the problem to raise the density, keep it at low density residential, see what develops if Grove goes through a revitalization. They're getting the convenience center. There's some other initiatives for Grove, and if the revitalization takes hold down there and there are groceries or other types of mom and pop stores or what have you for the residents, then certainly somebody could propose a project with a slightly higher density. But for right now, until that situation changes, I agree with Frank and Ginny that I think we should just leave it as is, which is low density residential. Any other comments? Paul, you had a hand up, but it may be from your last comment. Yep, okay. All right, if there are none,
I'm sorry, Rich.
I know you don't have a hand anymore, Tim, so just jump in.
So, you know, I'm kind of counter to the argument in that, you know, here's an opportunity to add to a community, which may help drive, obviously, the demand and the need. So, you know, I know it's not in the heart of the community, but, you know, there is a grocery store down towards Lee Hall. So, you know, like I said, it's not in the heart of the community, but it's not far away either. So, you know, I think if we want to redo Pocahontas Trail and do some of these things, then, you know, this is a way to create some of that energy. So I would be in favor of increasing the density there.
Okay, thank you. Julie.
Thank you. I want to build on what Tim just said, because if we say, no, let's not do this, and then ask staff to keep this in mind for after the development and redevelopment of Pocahontas Trail, I'm inclined to say, let's just go ahead and do this, because we will be looking at the availability of services and traffic impact, et cetera, if somebody does come forward with a proposal. And we really do have a situation of which one do we build first? Do we make sure that the infrastructure is there in terms of grocery stores, or do we provide the population that makes it more viable for a grocery store to want to come in? And I'm of the thought that if we have the population, the grocery stores will come. Thanks.
Thank you. And actually, I'm going to look at the flip side of my argument and say, you know, because I was saying we'll keep it at low density, and if there's the demand, somebody can come in with a proposal. But if it's zoned at moderate density and the infrastructure is not there, nobody's going to come in for the moderate density anyway. So I'm sort of shifting my direction more to in line with saying, let's give them the flexibility to add to the Grove community, and based on Julie and some of the other comments. So I think you brought up a good point. Anybody else? No. May I have a motion? This is on 0026 parcels on Ron Springs Road. Currently, it's low density residential with a proposal to increase that to moderate density residential.
This is Julie. I'm going to propose that we recommend approval of changing LU 20-0026 from low density to moderate density residential.
Thank you. Ellen?
Mr. Kropp.
Aye.
Mr. Haldeman.
Aye.
Ms. Leverins.
Aye.
Mr. O'Connor.
Aye.
Mr. Polster.
Aye.
Ms. Wortman.
Aye.
Motion
Good argument, Julie.
I'm sorry, what was
Thank you.
Good argument, Julie.
Mm-hmm.
You know, the future. I mean, you have to decide one way or another. That was a great argument. Thank you.
Yep. And as Ellen was going to say, the motion carries. So we're now on our last of the land use applications, LU-20-0027 parcels near Colonial Heritage on Richmond Road. And I'll turn to staff.
Thank you, Mr. Kropp. LU-20-0027 is a Scenario B initiated application and located at 6667 and 6693 Richmond Road. The parcels total to 28 acres, zoned A1 General Agriculture, and are located inside the PSA. The current land use designation is mixed use Lightfoot. The proposed land use designation is moderate density residential. Currently, the parcels are vacant. Staff recommends approval of this land use designation change. The key land use policy ideas recommended from the public input generally support bolstering areas that are designated for mixed use, which is the current designation for these parcels. These key policy ideas also support designated land within the PSA to a higher residential density, which would be the case should this parcel be redesignated to moderate density residential. Such a designation would allow for the residential character of these parcels to be retained while also preventing potential commercial strip development. Staff has received public comments for this application and is happy to answer any questions you may have. Thank you.
Thank you, Tom. Any questions for staff? Or discussion? Ginny.
I am going to propose that we keep this as mixed use. I'm still struggling with the same thing that I brought up with regard to number 20. Mixed use still permits moderate density residential. And if there were some other businesses in there, it wouldn't have the same, I'm not sure it would have the same traffic or density impact. So I think we just stick with mixed use.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Yes, and see, I'm looking for other hands. Any other comments? Tim,
Mr. Chairman, I'll make a motion for LU 20-0027 to keep it as is.
Okay.
Staff recommendation.
Okay. Now, staff has recommended that it be up to moderate density, but your motion is to keep it as mixed use Lightfoot.
Exactly. I'm sorry.
Okay. No, that's fine. That's fine. Ms. Cook?
Mr. Crop?
Aye.
Mr. Haldeman?
Aye.
Ms. Leverins?
Aye.
Mr. O'Connor?
Aye.
Mr. Polster? Mr. Polster?
I'm sorry. Aye.
Thank you. And Ms. Wortman?
Aye.
Motion carries. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you all very much. And thank you to staff. I mean, there's a huge amount of work that went into putting these presentations together and answering the myriad of email questions that we sent to them. And so thank you very much. And thanks to my colleagues on the working group. We had some animated at times, but some excellent discussions. And the Planning Commission will get to do this again in a couple more months. But thanks to everybody for your thoughtful presentations and discussions. I appreciate that. Are there any other items for discussion?
Mr. Chairman, I just wanted to thank Tim and Julia for their very thoughtful comments that made me think as we went through this process. I just think it was a great way to do this, even though we weren't seeing each other. And I do appreciate everybody's comments, especially Julia and Tim.
Good, good. Thank you, Frank.
Thank you.
Any other items for discussion? In that case, I will look for a motion to adjourn to the April 7th Planning Commission meeting.
Move to adjourn, Jack.
Thank you. All those in favor, please say aye.
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 Opposed? Okay, thank you.